Good evening, council, staff, and members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? I have Councilors Fisher and Thompson that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater dated February 5th, 2025 come to order at 6:34 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Please rise for the singing of O Canada. This is by the Forest Hill Public School. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Councilor, is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Not seeing any others, I will be calling conflict at 8.5 and turning the chair to Deputy Cabral at that time. And not seeing any at this time, I will now call upon Jeff Lees and Andrew Priest, who are here in person, to present a delegation from the Elmvale Park Lights Committee.
Members of council for having us this evening. My name is Jeff Lees, a lifelong resident of Elmvale, Ontario, born and raised and now raising a family in the beloved community of Elmvale. Certainly grew up in the community and know a lot about the topic that we're talking about this evening. And right from a young lad playing on that diamond right through to today.
My name is Andrew Priest, born and raised in Minising, Ontario. I do have a particularly vested interest in the town and community of Elmvale for sports and recreation. I'm the acting technical director and U18 coach of Elmvale Minor Hockey, and also an active member of the Elmvale Ballpark Committee here today. Next slide, please, clerk. Oof.
Quick, we were fast.
Perfect, thank you. This evening, we're going to run council and those from the community watching a brief presentation covering the topics listed on the slide. An introduction, a bit about the background and situation, a solution outlining the benefits, and closing out with our ask of council and the municipality. Next slide, please, clerk. Perfect. The Elmvale Ballpark Committee has existed and been active for several years in the community. With us this evening are a number of dedicated committee members that have a vested interest in the ballpark and its success. Ultimately, we're here this evening to speak with council about the lights situation at the Elmvale Baseball Diamond and the urgent need to replace the light fixtures. Next slide, please. We have a tri-party agreement that has been in place for almost 10 years between the Floss Agricultural Society, who owns the property, the Township of Springwater, and the Elmvale Ballpark Committee. This agreement outlines the responsibilities of each party. In December 2023, an agreement between the Floss Agricultural Society and the Township of Springwater was made. This relates to the property and the use of maintenance of facilities such as the baseball diamond and pavilion. This signals an important relationship and partnership between the three parties noted above. Next slide, please, clerk. Perfect. The existing lights were installed in 2002 with significant fundraising efforts by the community with strong leadership by the Elmville Ballpark Committee at the time. Ultimately, now 23 years later, there is a need for new fixtures as the lighting poses a significant safety hazard for all participants. The existing 2016 Township Parks and Recreation Master Plan has strong support for the Elmville Ballpark Diamond and its continued success moving forward for the benefit of the community. Would also like to note, we are aware there's an update that's currently happening to the existing plan. Next slide, please, clerk.
So the Elmville Ball Diamond has 6 poles, which includes 26 fixtures. You can see in the picture there, the 2 on the right are the 2 behind home plate, and then there's 2 midfield and 2 outfield. The property, as was noted, is owned by the Floss Agricultural Society with an agreement in place for use and maintenance. Roughly 10 of the 26 fixtures are burnt out. They're obsolete, so they cannot be replaced. There's no way to replace those fixtures or buy replacement fixtures. The majority of those are located on the infield. As was noted, this creates a significant health and safety concern, a hazard for the participants. I know in discussions with a number of the leagues, everyone is equally as concerned about the safety of the participants when playing at night at that diamond. Next slide, please. This slide talks about the utilization during prime time. I pulled this number from the 2016 Parks and Rec Master Plan, and it talked about that diamond had 75% utilization during prime time. When you look at all the diamonds in Springwater, it was certainly one of the diamonds that had the greatest usage. We've listed a number of the user groups that utilize the facility and the diamond. As you can see, I'm not going to walk through them because I think they're self-explanatory. But a wide variety of youth right through to adult leagues and organizations, which certainly speaks to the 75% number that I talked about. I do want to point out the third last bullet talks about other community groups. In 2023, there was a very successful Elmville Relay for Life event that occurred. It occurred throughout the evening. It raised roughly $39,000, had dozens of volunteers, 300 participants, and donated money towards the Cancer Society. And so this is just one example of the success of that diamond that proves its worth and its value to the community. And I say community with a capital C, meaning the municipality. Next slide, please. Third piece here I want to talk about is that there is no municipally owned baseball diamonds in Elmville. And I think everyone knows that. It really makes this diamond integral to the success of youth and adult sport, and really outside of sports as well. As I talked about the events, the township utilizes it for programming and the like. So there's lots that happens at that diamond. As is noted on the slide, it serves residents from all 4 corners of the municipality. And roughly there's 400 participants that utilize that diamond on a weekly basis, right from minor ball to adult, men's and women's and mixed leagues, right through to the end of the weekend. Next slide, please. So the last piece I'm going to talk about is the 20-year community-based strategic plan that exists for the township. I don't have to tell council what that is because certainly you folks know what that is, but I think it's an important document to highlight as it relates to our ask this evening. There's 5 goals. The first goal there, leveraging growth to improve Springwater as a community. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to drill down a little bit deeper. And it talks about building complete communities to support local population, including the necessary infrastructure for people of different ages and stages in life. And I've talked about that in the last couple minutes about youth right through to adult sport. But I'll drill down a little bit further. And 4.3 talks about exploring opportunities to further enhance recreational amenities in and around the Elmville settlement area by partnering with community organizations. And if what we're here this evening is not the definition of that, I'm not sure what is, because I think it certainly hits home to the point that's in your strategic plan. Next slide, please. The last piece I want to talk about, or that I want to touch on, is there is a quote in the existing 2016 Parks and Rec Master Plan, page 69, section 4.3, and it's the belief statement. And it says, "We believe that an investment in parks, recreation, and culture in Springwater Township is an investment in the beauty and appeal of our community and the growth and development of our citizens, our community, our economy, and our environment." And again, I think it really drives home the point that we're here this evening. It's a partnership from our perspective. There's a number of partners at the table, and we hope that we can count on Springwater Council to be a partner as part of that. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the solution, and this is kind of a three-part component. So the first piece is inevitably we need to replace the fixtures while maintaining the existing standards. The existing standards are solid and they've been inspected and they are good to stay as is. We've got experienced, incredible contractors that we've engaged. We've got quotes in hand, and that's what's driving the number that we've presented in a few slides as part of this evening's presentation. The second piece is there is significant community fundraising that's ongoing and making significant progress. We've engaged over 50 individuals, organizations, businesses, leagues, not-for-profits, et cetera. And to the tune of, we have now realized $22,000, fundraised $22,000 in a very short period of time. There's a number of other commitments that have been made. They've just not come to fruition, but we're certainly continuing to explore those. Next slide, please. And the last piece is why we're here this evening. We would like to cost share on this particular project with the Township of Springwater. From our perspective, bylaw 2002-020, which talks about the Springwater Hydro Reserve Fund, is a technical slam dunk from our perspective. It talks about 3 criteria in the top section of 5.1 and how the project must meet at a minimum 1 of those 3. We believe we meet all 3 of those criteria and the project that we're here this evening for. The bottom piece in your bylaw, again, talks about kind of the viability of the short and the long term, and we're very comfortable speaking to the viability of this project moving forward as it relates to the 5 components in the bylaw. Next slide, please.
Yeah, next we'd just like to talk about some benefits. Obviously, there's lots of benefits to this project between all parties, especially including seeing the continued youth and adult recreation in the area as being the forefront within Elmvale and the surrounding area, encapsulating the whole township many times. We also highlight 4 specific guiding principles out of the township's 2016 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Those 4 principles being sustainability of leisure facilities, parks, and open space, community development, supporting an active, healthy, and engaged community, and lastly, evolve partnerships between the municipality and voluntary sector. I think a lot of those kind of speak to themselves, but especially the last one with the tri-party agreement between the voluntary sector and the municipality as a whole. Next slide, please. Next, we have some quotes kind of outlining the benefits. This quote is from Crystal Graveson, the president of MLBIA, and she's kind of highlighting their mission is to ensure the area remains a vibrant hub for thriving businesses with an economic success driven by tourism from local attractions such as the Elmvale Baseball Diamond. They are proud to support the Elmvale Ballpark Committee and anticipate the field's revival this summer. Next slide, please. Next slide we have from Carrie Gorham from Elmvale Minor Baseball, who is with us tonight. She provides a quote calling to attention the immediate need of new lights. Elmvale Minor Baseball is a significant user of the Elmvale Baseball Diamond. They use it 2 nights minimum a week, and specifically for the U15, U17, and U21 programming. Without these lights, they will not be able to play in Elmvale this upcoming season. Next slide, please. Next, we have a quote from Tanya King, who is also with us tonight. She is the president of the Floss Agricultural Society. And it's always important that we have the Floss Agricultural Society's support because they are the owner of the land. They have always been an engaged, supportive, and committed partner throughout all the years the Elmvale Ballpark Committee has existed. And you can see Tanya draws comparisons of the famous Elmvale Fall Fair to recreations such as baseball at the Elmvale Diamond, and they're both being vital to community development in the area. Next slide, please. The next slide offered by myself here is kind of highlighting the Elmvale Recreational Basketball League, also known as the Thursday Night League in Elmvale. It's a big hub for adult recreation in the area. Members from all 5 wards in the township and outside the township as well play in this league. Every game requires lights because we play from 6:45 to 10:45 every Thursday. Play 18 times a year, 2 tournaments. So it is a big we do draw some cash to the local economy during those tournaments and those Thursday night games with the amount of people that come out and support as well. So next slide, please.
So these last 2 slides, and I want to be cognizant of time. I know that we are under a little timeline, so I'm going to wrap it up pretty quick. Our call to action ultimately is a one-time funding request from the township for $35,000 from the Springwater Hydro Reserve Fund per bylaw 2002-020. We've estimated the project to be $70,000 based on the quotes we've received, with the intent that it's a 50-50 partnership from the Township of Springwater. We recognize that the project may come in a little bit under budget. Our ask of the municipality is 50% of the actual cost. So it's not a flat $35,000. It's an ask to the tune of a maximum of $35,000 based on the actual cost of the project. There's no direct tax support impacts based on the reserve fund draw, and it's an investment in recreation with significant benefit for the community as a whole. Next slide, please. We've taken the liberty of drawing up a draft motion. I recognize that there may be amendments to that if I know anything about the municipal sector, but certainly open to discussion and any questions through your worship. Next slide, please. And with that, your worship, we'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Perfect, and thank you for that. And before I do go to members of council, I'm just going to have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please. I have Councillors Fisher and Garwood. That the delegation from the Elmvale Ballpark Lights Committee regarding their request for financial support to replace the ball diamond lights be received. And I know that Clerk Marshall does have a prepared amendment being brought forward by Councillors Garwood and Fisher. But before we do that, I will open the floor to members of council. Councillor Fisher. Let me just comment at this time. Councillors Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And first off, thank you to Jeff and Andrew for being here, and half of Elmvale. It's pretty great to see. We were joking before. I think this is the most people we've seen in this audience all term. So it's pretty exciting, and it shows the dedication of the Elmvale community and the surrounding area. No, not everyone's just from one community. This ball diamond supports the entire municipality. So thank you for being here. I also wanted to take the moment to thank the committee for the efforts that they've put forward. I know there's a lot of faces in here that sit on that committee that have been advocating for this for many months now. To raise over $20,000 with additional funds committed already is significant, especially with many of them being local community businesses and families and partners. So that's a incredible feat. But it was mentioned during the presentation that this is a partnership, and that's exactly in my opinion, what that entire grounds is. We know there's a variety of different stakeholders on the Floss Ag Society property. Of course, the Ag Society, the municipality with the arena, and the ball committee as well. So I think it's important that this council continues to invest in local recreation throughout our entire municipality, and definitely enhance the safety. We know that's the concern, and that's the issue, and why the group's here tonight. Second, I wanted to focus upon the Springwater Hydro Reserve Fund. Yes, there is funds still remaining in that reserve, and there has been for many years. And this is the perfect example of what that fund is intended for, to be a direct benefit to support our community while also not impacting the tax base within the village of Elmvale. So again, I wanted to say thank you for that. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention from a BIA perspective, the economic development impact that we know that recreation has on not just the Elmvale community, but Springwater as a whole. You saw the BIA happily and eagerly supporting this project because, again, it is significantly important to our local businesses who I've spoken to that have said, without the arena, without the ball diamond, without recreation as a whole in our community, our businesses might not be able to open their doors. So this is so incredibly important, and I'm eagerly and happy to be a part of the amendment that Councillor Fisher and I are bringing forward, and I'm quite excited hopefully to see this move forward and be at the diamond this summer.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. All I can say is thanks for coming out. Great presentation. I've had some dialogue with a couple of members on the committee ongoing. Mr. Tinney there at the back at the fall, we had a nice walk and a chat about it. What I'd like to say is this is the perfect fit for that particular fund. It's not township property, but we maintain the diamond. So it really is a symbiotic relationship. And that particular fund really embodies what that money should be for. And this is a perfect fit. The presentation was great, but I'll tell you, I was already sold before you folks even got started. the really, really nice thing is that you also had an opportunity to bring the community together. They're putting some skin in the game. People are stepping up to the plate and contributing as well. So that's really, really nice to see. Very heartwarming. Not like just showing up and saying, please just give us a pile of cash and we'll do it. You folks have worked hard and you deserve to be recognized for that. And I guess the other thing is you certainly can't play in the dark. It doesn't work very well. And thirdly, if you could just keep it down when the home runs happen. I'm about 14 or 1,800 feet away, but I can still hear it sometimes on a clear night. But fully in support of this. Thank you.
Counselor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I will keep this short. I'm happy to support this initiative. Since being on council, I've worked with Hillsdale Minor Ball quite a bit in terms of just the scheduling of the diamond, understand the importance of the lights. We're at overcapacity in Springwater for the amount of people that want to use our diamonds, whether they're township owned or outside owned. So I think this is a great initiative. The whole community is involved with this. It's great. Both of my kids played Elmville Marino Ball and played right at that diamond. So again, great job of the fundraising. It's amazing. Great job of getting everyone out. I made the joke when I peeked out here, saw the number of people and went back in and said, I think Elmville Marino Ball just took over Elmville Minor Hockey. So great job. Happy to support, move forward with this.
Any other comments from members, council? And before I go to Councillor Fisher, I do want to say that the onset of these discussions were in passing, and my immediate response is, but it's not township property. And I want to thank each of you for your dedication in proving me wrong, that this is Elmville's property. This is the township's property. It's in partnership with it. So thank you for bearing with me to come to this, and it's very exciting to support. I would like to point out that there was far more Spitfire photos than Cougars photos on there, and the Friday Nighters were also left out. But I will say that when my husband and I first moved here, we went and played Friday Nighters, and that's how we got to meet a lot of the community. We've never lived in Elmville, but do feel as part of the community. So I'm in full support of this, and thank you for bearing with me and allowing me to come to the right decision. So thank you. Councillor Fisher?
All right, guys, I'm going to read the amendment and then have a few comments afterwards. The council hereby supports the one-time funding contribution of $35,000 from the Springwater Hydro Reserve Fund to the Elmville Ballpark Committee to match the committee's fundraising efforts for the purpose of replacing the existing lights at the Elmville Ballpark located at 14 George Street. I just wanted to point out, I did speak with a few members of council, our deputy mayor and the Ward 1 councillor. You guys had asked for up to 35,000 the amount of fundraising that you did was very impressive. I think, to use your phrase, skin in the game. So we've decided to give a full 35,000, not up to, so you have a full amount there. And just a few comments. I really do think it's great use of the land. Geographically, it's right in the heart of town. I think that it does have a significant impact, and it's something, being from Midhurst, we use the rink and Doran Park. It's something I can certainly relate to. I think every small town in Springwater has that place, so it's something we can all relate to, and I agree, it's Springwater wide, right? So it's very important. It's tremendous to see you raise this amount of money, but also too, I do want to point out a member of the Ag Committee reached out to me. He's actually the chair, I believe you know him. He reached out to me twice now and said, he didn't pressure me into it, but he said, Phil, this is really special to the community. It's very special to the people in the community. We talked a little bit about it, and he said, actually before you went to Florida, he said, Phil, no pressure, but if you could please open your mind to it. And so obviously it meant a lot to him and the people around him. So, so I think it's something good for the community. So it has my full support.
So we do have the amendment before us here, and I have that moved by councillors Garwood and Fisher. And can you pull that back up? That the Township of Springwater provide a one-time contribution of 35,000 from the Springwater Hydro Reserve Fund to the Elmville Ballpark Committee to match the committee's fundraising efforts to replace the existing lighting at the Elmville Ballpark located at 14 George Street. And where's the and? No, there is no and. And I do believe that members of council received an email earlier today from someone that does far too much homework, that there are discretionary funds of each individual members. So I took it one step further and has requested that we, the three people on there, put forward $1,000. Was it $1,000 from their individual discretions? So that from myself and Councillor Garwood to be added to that. So that would be 1,000 from each of the funds. And there we have it. And I'm the mover and seconder, I'm assuming are okay with that second part. So council, all those in favor? And that has carried.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not sure if that was Tim or Tom, but welcome back. No, that was you. Okay. Grizz. So we'll just give a couple minutes here and allow those who want to stick around and those who, yeah. Thank you very much. All right. And I'm just checking to see if we do have anyone from Georgian General Bay Hospital. Perfect. All right. So at this time, I would like to call upon John Russell for a presentation from the Georgian Bay General Hospital Foundation.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Nicole Krafchuk. I'm the CEO of Georgian Bay General Hospital Foundation. And with me tonight is Jen Russell. She's our Director of Communications and Engagement for the hospital.
Sorry, I'm actually just gonna ask you to pause for just a second. And if you can move closer, we actually do have to keep the doors open because it's an open meeting. So if they're closed,
Can everybody hear?
it's Jess. And I mean, I can tell Elmville to quiet down, but I don't know that they'll actually listen. So if you can just speak extremely loud until,
follow, you know.
thank you. Thank you.
So support for Georgian Bay General Hospital is certainly vital to the community and vital to our hospital. We know that in the past, the Township of Springwater has supported, if you can go to the next slide, please, clerk. With a total of $7,200 towards our physician recruitment efforts at the hospital. And I know that the physician recruitment team was here in the fall to give you an update. But as the steward of those funds through the Hospital Foundation, we wanted to express our gratitude for that support. We'd also like to express our gratitude for your commitment to McHappy Day. We know that there's great representation on McHappy Day, and through that, funds raised go to GBGH. I'm going to turn it over to Jen, and I'll come back afterwards, and she's going to talk a little bit about the hospital.
So if you go to the next slide, actually you can skip over one more too. That's perfect. Thank you. So this just gives you an update on kind of the busyness and how much Springwater residents are using Georgian Bay General Hospital. This shows emergency department visits. So 6% of all the emergency department visits to GBGH are from residents of Springwater Township. I know there's you probably have residents that go all over the place. So we're thankful to be able to serve some of your residents as well. And that number continues to grow in all of those areas. Our hospital is busier than it has ever been. If you go to the next slide, please. This is just to give you an idea of just how big and busy the hospital is getting. The crew itself, number of people that support the hospital is over 1,000. So that includes staff, credentialed staff, which is doctors, midwives, dentists, and also volunteers. The emergency department visits continue to grow, over 42,000 each year. And surgeries continue to grow. There are over 600,000 laboratory tests performed every year. So this is a very busy organization. If you go to the next slide, please. I'm just going to run you through some of the top priorities, give you an update of some of the exciting things that are coming down the pipeline for GBGH. The first one is the MRI project. So this has been ongoing for the last 2 years. We're excited to say that in January, the machine itself, as you can see in the picture there, was actually delivered to the building and craned into the side of the 25 square foot addition that we've built on the building. This is really critical because there are about 4,000 people that leave the community in order to get MRI services. If you know anyone who is waiting for an MRI, they're probably waiting 6 months, 8 months, a year. The wait times are very long, and there just isn't enough capacity right now. So once this is up and running, which should be in March, fingers crossed that everything stays on plan, they should be able to provide enough MRIs to service all of those who are leaving the community. So it should be operational about 16 hours a day to be able to service all of those who need that service in our community right now. If you go to the next slide, please. The other thing the hospital has been really focused on recently is increasing surgical activity. This is through huge investment in equipment and technology that allows more surgeries and more types of surgeries to happen at GBGH. What you see in the picture there is a C-arm, so it allows surgery to be performed with sort of an X-ray machine as well. So there's some specialized procedures that happen, as well as some orthopedic procedures. So those investments allow more surgeries to happen close to home, which is really valuable for people in the community who don't have to travel a long distance after a surgery. They can recover close to home, and if they do have to be in hospital post-surgery, that means their family and friends are close by as well. Increasing surgical activity becomes really important because we can now offer ENT surgeries, some gynecological surgeries, and this year the hospital is focused on growing that program to provide urology surgery at GBGH as well. So on the next slide, please. This project is very exciting for us. We are looking to add mammography at GBGH by the end of the year. GBGH is currently the only hospital in our district that doesn't have mammography services. And I don't know if that's a direct result, but we also have some of the lowest screening rates. So in order to improve those, we know that early detection is best for all in these cases. It means that treatment plans can be less complex. It means that lives are saved because these types of screens are catching cancer sooner. So providing this in our community is going to be really beneficial. The program is designed to make it accessible. There are ways to book online, by phone. There will be ways to show up without an appointment so that if you can't make it work to book in advance, those are the types of things that are going to increase the screening rate. So they're really focused on making this better for the people who need these mammography screens. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. On the heels of that, we're also looking at the importance of acute mental health care in our hospital. There are more than 1,700 acute mental health patients in a year at GBGH, and we are not funded for any services to provide acute mental health care. So this means that somebody that comes in is triaged, and then they are waiting for a regional mental health bed. Those beds exist at Waypoint, at RVH, at OSMH, but they do not exist in our hospital. This results in patients waiting in our emergency department, sometimes up to 100 hours in a small white 9x10 room with an exam bed bolted to the floor, because that's what we have available for someone who is in crisis. And if you weren't unwell before you started staying in that room for 5 days, then you certainly would be when you're ready to move on to the next stage in the process. So one of the things that makes it really important to bring this service to GBGH is 44% of all those patients have a medical something to go along with their mental health crisis. So they also need care in a hospital, not necessarily just a psychiatric hospital. So having those beds at GBGH becomes very important. On the next slide, please. You'll see our plans. The GBGH plans include 24 acute mental health beds. It's a 50,000 square foot addition. A couple key things, it gets built on the back of our emergency department is the way the plans are laid out. So it becomes kind of a bridge. We own the property. It also includes 16 acute mental health beds and 8 specialized geriatric beds, which means that those who may be at home and struggling and don't have the next step can be seen in the emergency department and then get care in a bed there. And the other really cool part about it is it will have partial hospitalization and outpatient services as well, so that care that starts in our hospital after an acute episode can actually be continued within the hospital as well. On the next slide, you'll see how these projects kind of lay out over the next decade or so. Right now, we're really focused on equipment and technology, raising money to invest in MRI, in mammography, and then mental health right on the heels of that. And then in the future, sometime in 2030 something maybe, there are plans for a new hospital. For most of 2025, the hospital has been bursting at the seams. It's an 113-bed hospital. There are currently 126 patients admitted. So there are patients in beds and stretchers and always waiting for a bed in the hospital. It simply exceeded the capacity. So building a new hospital is definitely on the horizon. It will be 3 times the footprint, twice the number of beds. And so we're fortunate that we own the 22 acres of land beside the hospital, and that was where this new hospital will go in the future. I'll just pass it back to Nicole to give you an idea of how community support is helping with these projects.
Perfect. You can press forward for 2 slides, actually. So next one. There we go. So this year, we raised funds to support ultrasound machine in the hospital. We renovated 2 X-ray rooms and put in some surgical tables in the hospital. So that's been part of our capital equipment expansion. Moving forward, if you go to the next slide. What we're looking at doing for this year as well is automated urinalysis machine, patient beds, and medication dispensing units. Those 2 units that we're looking at putting in for the medication dispensing units, one will be in the emerge department and one will actually be in what we call a surge space, so 1 East, where we put overcapacity patients actually currently right now. So integral to expand on because of that extra patient volume. Next slide, please. So as Jen mentioned, the foundation is quietly right now embarking on a $20 million capital campaign called We See You Inside and Out. It's for the expansion of mental health services at the hospital and programs, as well as capital equipment, which includes MRI, mammography, and then continued capital equipment for the next 4 years. What we are doing is focusing on allowing the community to see that the staff at the hospital see for who they are as an individual and that they will get incredible care at our hospital for whatever that service is that they need. Additionally, we want our staff to know, our staff will see that they see that community as important when they walk through those doors. Next slide, please. So we're grateful, of course, as I said, for your continued support through hospital support through the County of Simcoe, as well as physician recruitment and your efforts for McHappy Day. So tonight we just wanted to be here to provide an update to you and answer any questions that you may have considering the number of patients that are coming into our hospital from your township. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. And before we do move to questions, can I have a mover and seconder for this, please? I have Councillor Moore and Councillor Thompson that the delegation from the Georgian Bay General Hospital Foundation regarding the update on Georgian Bay General Hospital be received. And I can turn to members of council for any comments or questions. And Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Collin. I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming before council. It's really refreshing to find out what's going on at the hospital outside of reading the news every once in a while. So I do appreciate the time you've taken. Thanks very, very much.
You're welcome. I joked with Jen that if something happens at the Ball Diamond, you're going to need the hospital. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Perfect.
When?
When? That's great. Not seeing anything further. So yes, thank you very much for the update. And I
Thank you.
believe are you part of the Alliance coming forward at county as well? Do you come with the Alliance or it's just the Alliance?
It's just the alliance.
thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. We're now moving on to question period. Now we'll turn to Clerk Marshall to see if there has been any submissions received.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no question period submissions received for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And we'll now turn to members of the audience for any or questions of council this evening. And not seeing any, we will now move on to number 6, our minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes, please? I have Deputy Brawl and Councilor Garwood. That the minutes. That's me. There we are. That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. 1, our minutes of the special meeting of the council of January 15th, 2025 at 4 p.m. 2, the minutes of the special meeting of council of January 15th, 2025 at 5 p.m. And 3, the minutes of the special meeting of council closed session January 15th, 2025. And 4, the minutes of the regular meeting of council of January 15th, 2025. Are there any comments or questions on any of these minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. We'll now move on to our board and committee. May I have a mover and seconder for this, please? I have Councilor Garwood and Alexander. That the minutes of the boards and committees listed herein be received for information. And we have the minutes of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee of the January 21st, 2025. Any comments or questions on this? All those in favor? That has carried. And we will now move on to our action reports. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Councilors Thompson and Moore. And the first action report we have here is our ward boundary review. And before us, council, are 2 options. And the motion is read as follows. That the report from the clerk regarding the ward boundary review dated February 5th, 2025 be received. And option 1, that council hereby approves the final recommendation 1 outlined in the consultant's final report to establish a new ward system. And that the bylaw to enact the new boundaries be presented for consideration and a final approval on the February 19th, 2025 regular meeting of council. And 2, option 2, that council hereby approves final recommendation number 2 outlined in the consultant's report to establish a new ward system and that bylaw be enacted for the new boundaries to be presented for consideration and final approval at the February 19th, 2025 regular meeting of council. And at this time, council, we can open the floor for any comments, discussion. And we do have comments or questions. Councilor Moore? Sorry, I can go first. I never like to go first, but I can go first. I did have conversation with Councilor Moore. And unfortunately we didn't have time between the meetings to further discuss. But there was some concern about an at-large deputy. Maybe even moving to 6 wards, understanding that the county of Simcoe is enacting a change potentially where the role of the deputy mayor will be significantly different, and that there was a lot of difficulty in creating a balance. As we've seen, this was triggered by a 25% differential, and the responses that come back to us still allude to a 25% differential, which would just simply mean that this would be in place for potentially 1 election, and the next council would have to do it all over again. So with that and the potential that's going to come back to this council with the changes to the county council system, there could be opportunity for us to adopt a model similar to Oro-Medonte, whereby we have 6 wards and then appoint a deputy that would become the alternate at county. So I will turn to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Ditto. Because that's exactly what I was thinking also. And so I would like to provide direction from today's meeting though, because there is value in the work that has been done. And I think we can see the effects of the growth at the south end of our municipality and how difficult that is to manage, because it would be for a short time. It wouldn't be for a long time. So if the direction could be that we ask the consultant to take some of this information back and come back to us again with what that would look like, the 6 wards. I know during the public meeting, they talked about a ward between Ward 4 and 5, sort of a smaller, very, very condensed ward. If we could take maybe a look at that too.
And we do have the consultant here with us online, so maybe I'll just turn and see, understanding that this said final report, and we are now asking for a addition onto that. So if you could just describe to us what that work plan could look like.
Yeah, thanks, through you, Mayor. I think it's just timing is one thing that has to be considered. If the plan is to look at a 6-ward option with a composition change regarding the election of deputy mayor, I imagine the municipality would want to do some public engagement around that again. So it's just getting a little tight from a timing perspective, because ideally council wants to make a final decision and pass a bylaw. We like to say no later than the beginning of June, because once council passes a bylaw, there's a 45-day appeal period, which brings you, if you do it at the beginning of June, which brings you into the middle of August. And then that appeal has to be heard and decided by no later than December 31st, 2025. If council wants that structure to be enacted for the 2026 election. So I hope that answers most of your question, but some of it will be dependent on how robust council thinks that any further public engagement would need to be with these additional options.
Thank you for that. And I do have Deputy Councilor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I will admit I'm a little bit surprised. First off, I think before we would do that, we would have to determine as a council whether or not a deputy mayor was a valid position on this council. And I think we're also in a position where we need to wait and see what's going to happen, whether they're going to remain at 32 or whether they're actually going to move to 16. So I don't know where this kind of stands. I think what we heard at the very beginning is that this goes for, every 4 or 5 years, they're going to revisit it. I would suggest that if we're already this far down into it, is to stay with the status quo, and at least until we find out what's going to happen with the county composition. Because if you get rid of it, and then we find out that they're going to stay at 32, then you're going to have to turn around and reintroduce it. So I would suggest that maybe we consider moving forward with one of these 2 options, not necessarily even today, but I think it'd be premature to say that we're going to go to 6 wards and remove the deputy's position. There were some other councils at the county level that had the deputy position, regardless of whether there was someone sitting at council or not, in order to augment the mayor's role and assist the mayor and fill in when the mayor was not available. So cut off a bit here by this. Not that I would be, necessarily opposed. As I said at council, county council, if they removed that particular seat and went to 16, I'd be the first one to step forward to vacate. So anyway, certainly caught off guard here with that respect. I want to put that out there, that there are a couple of things that could cause for concern if we were to move forward and suggest that we're going to go to six wards right now. I think it might be prudent to wait and see and continue with the status quo with the 5 wards, the mayor and the deputy at large. And let next council at the end of their term take a walk on it and see what they want to do at that point in time. We do have time constraints too. So that's just my opinion. I'm not looking to keep my position. I think I'm here till the end of this term anyway.
Thank you for that, Deputy Carroll. And it wasn't to remove the position of deputy mayor. It would be similar to what takes place in Oro-Medonte, where there's the responsibility of 6 wards, and then the deputy mayor position is appointed. So one of the ward councillors, much like Collingwood, and anyway, I apologize for not speaking to you about this before. The reason that it was brought up is in speaking with other members, the palette for option 1 or 2 does not seem to be something that is really charging forward. It doesn't seem to be a lot of support for either one, to be quite honest. And I think too, understanding that we do have such a differential amongst wards, status quo doesn't seem to be a great path forward. So I think we just kind of found ourselves stuck and thought that as the county moves forward in their consideration of this as they go forward with the triple majority, we could have that work being done so that should that decision be made by county, we're ready to pull the trigger on it. So just to provide an option is really all it was. I have Councillor Garwood, and is it follow on?
I guess so.
Sure. Deputy Cabral, Garwood, and Thompson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would just like to say I'm a little bit disappointed that I wasn't brought up to speed on that particular piece of information to be brought up before council, because quite frankly, it directly affects the deputy's position. And having known what this was gonna come forward and what it was actually about, I would have felt a lot more comfortable than making some of the remarks that I just made. So I would ask that in future, you take the time and courtesy to apprise your deputy of what might come up at this council table. So thank you very much. And I certainly understand where we're going now. Thank you.
And thank you. And just to provide context to that, this stems from a 3-second conversation, maybe. It wasn't intended to catch anyone off guard. It was to provide options for people. And as you will know, spending a lot of time on the phone with everyone is not something we all do. So it was not intentional, and nor do I in any disrespect to your position. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Councillor Moore and Mayor Coughlin, for bringing this forward. Again, this is the first I'm hearing of it as well, but I'm intrigued. I'm interested in hearing more about it, and I think this is the time to do it. When I look at final option 1 and 2, final option 1, I have concern in regards to the geographical size of Ward 2. I think that's a pretty obvious one there. And for final option number 2, my significant concern is the population by 2034 of Ward 5. Of course, it's significantly larger, and the council of the day is going to have to spend these dollars once again to go down that path, which might be the case anyway, no matter which direction we go. But we're in it right now. If the consultant feels that it is feasible, of course, I agree, public consultation is important and we should go back to the public in regards to that. But I am fully supportive in regards to investigating the opportunity or option of a 6th ward. Through the mayor to either Clerk Marshall or the consultant, can you advise in regards to timeline for public consultation that occurred this past summer and fall with the original report coming forward? Thank you.
I'll turn to our consultant for that, please.
Yeah, I think we had 1-day sessions, afternoon and evening sessions. So, I guess as long as that can get fit in a reasonable time, obviously allowing the consultant team to design some 6 ward options. Yeah, but that's basically what it was 1 day, afternoon, evening sessions in council chambers.
Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you to the consultant for providing that information. Again, just adding on to the mayor's comments from earlier, I see this working or happening at the same time as the county discussion and decision, understanding that will also be coming to this table and to all lower tiers within the county of Simcoe at some point as well. So I'm happy to support that direction forward.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I would be comfortable with choosing option 2 for the time being in the next election. And then once the county makes their decision about the deputy mayor, then addressing it at that time, because the scope of work is, a lot of it's already been done. And then I'm just not comfortable leaving the wards the way they are, given the difference in the size of them.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would agree with Councillor Thompson on this. I do think there's merit in looking at the 6 ward system. I don't know if the county is going to make the decision in this time period because we don't have a lot of time. And if they don't, I do think we have to have some sort of action to move forward with. So potentially that option 2 stays on the table. I'm not saying that we vote on it tonight, but it stays on the table. So depending on where we are after we look at the 6 ward system, as an option, it's probably, from my perspective, the most palatable. But again, I think there are issues with it. So I would, be able to do both of them, have them as, you know, concurrent options, if you will, depending on timing of county.
Thank you for that. And I think listening to the table, if we move forward with option 2 and the county of Simcoe does realign their composition of council, we can make recommendations moving forward at that time. The intent of this was just to try and bridge a gap, but if members of council are satisfied with option 2 is what I'm seeing faces again. Okay. All right. Back to Councillor Alexander.
Sorry, I wasn't clear there. I would like to move forward with, as you said, re-engaging to look at the 6, but knowing that we may have to go back, like that option 2 may be our final choice in that we may not be able to move, the county may not move at the pace we require.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. And I agree, Councillor Alexander. I think that's really what I'm thinking as well. I don't think either option is fantastic, but just to exhaust everything that we were provided, I'd like to ask Jack, if I may. You mentioned during the public meeting about a trigger. So you could set a trigger. So if things were to stay the status quo like they are now, but you set a trigger for population growth, how does that, or when would that take effect? Because, you know, this would have to be with the next election cycle, et cetera.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, through the mayor. So really good question and maybe related to some of the commentary. Even if you went 6 wards now, I think you would still run into some difficulties because the issue that I think I'm hearing and the issue the consultant team ran into in designing the 5 ward option that's going to work well today and in 10 years was the concentration of growth, primarily with regard to the Midhurst secondary plan. So even if we split it out into 6 now, you would still likely have a ward that would be well under population parity until that growth took off. So related to the question that was asked by Councillor Moore, one thing that came up in public consultation was, is there a way that you can create the system that you want now that reflects what the population is today, and then basically a new line gets drawn. And what Councillor Moore was referring to is you set maybe a population trigger and you say, once the Midhurst secondary plan hits X, and we can determine what that is, then you draw a line and that ward then splits into 2. So I think I really like the thinking that's going on about that extra ward, but perhaps it's done in a phased approach where you pick a system that works now, you have an opportunity to change that system to work well in 10 years without really adjusting the other 5 wards. And then it gives you also, as you've been saying, that flexibility that should a composition change occur at county, you have something pretty much built in that could change quite quickly. So again, in terms of can any of this happen for the 2026 election? If you make a decision on one option, you have something in place for sure. And then really it just depends on the timing of when those other things happen, whether council can pivot and actually change it in time for 2026.
Councillor Garwood? No? So our path forward, Deputy Cabral.
Sorry, Mayor Coughlin, just in respect to what I've been hearing around the table and what I just heard from Mr. Amendolia, I'm thinking maybe our best move is to actually move forward with option number 2. And if things don't change, we're going to stay with option 2. And if things do change, even if it's post changing the boundaries, there may still be opportunity to make suggestions for the future.
So at this time then, I would need a mover and seconder for option 2. And what we've heard here tonight is as things unravel county, if we as a council want to come back and take another stab at it, it's at our discretion, I guess. Is that what I'm hearing? No, okay. Councillors Moore, Fisher, and Garwood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm not prepared to make that decision today. I would prefer, like we've asked, for the consultant to come back to us, and I'm hoping this can all be done relatively quickly before those dates and before certainly the end of what the cutoffs are. I'd love to have that information come back. I'd like to know what those trigger numbers are. You know, to maybe make a sixth ward. I'd like to know what the deputy mayor should or should not happen, what that fallout would look like. I don't know myself where we sit right now. I'm not really happy with option 1 or 2. They're sort of okay, but I don't see that option 2 is going to do us good for very long, because Ward 5 is very large. So not a long time. I'm just asking for a short time to come back with some additional information.
Councillor Fisher?
I tend to agree. I don't think it would take very much longer for us to attain that information. I think it would suit us well to have it, and I do agree that Ward 5 population-wise will explode. So I think that we'd be well suited right now just to garner some extra information before we do anything. So I would also, you know, the more I hear it, the more comfortable I'd be with that as well, rather than, I'm not going to say rush into something, but maybe choose something that's a little lackluster.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just stemming off of the previous 2 comments, I completely agree with Councillor Fisher and Councillor Moore. I came in today with a different perspective, actually, from when I sat down at this table, and now I've changed my mind a bit. So I'm amending to the idea. But again, I'm now not in a position that is comfortable with making a decision based upon an option before we have all the information. If we're doing it now, let's take the time and do it. If it's feasible, if it's possible in the next few months by that June timeline, I think it would be worthwhile for this council to have the information. There's a very good chance we end up with final option number 2. Absolutely. But we can make that decision in 2 months, or we can make it today. But I think making it in 2 months allows us to have more information available at our fingertips. You know, by no means am I interested in making a non-decision, but I think this does provide direction to the consultant forward and direction to the community, indicating that this council is seeking additional information before making a significant change, whether it affects 1 election or 3. But my question would be to either the mayor or the deputy mayor, understanding you both sit at council, has there been any indication as to when the discussion and decision will come to the lower tiers from the county?
No, we had a Teams meeting on Tuesday, and at that time, the clerk's department was going to provide circulated notice to the all the clerks. There still has to be the county information session, so they still have to go through their public input. They have to compile all that input and then goes back down to the clerks. But because a lot of councils are asking the same questions we are, the county clerk's department is going to provide information to the lower tier clerks as to a timeline, so that as councils we understand, okay, these are the dates before them. So that information is to be coming. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, for that. So I think with that in mind, then, again, I would like to see direction put forward that allows us to provide direction to the consultant, gather additional data while that discussion from the county comes to this table. And if the timeline is not feasible and we get down a month or 2 from now, at least we've tried.
Councillor Thompson? My apologies, Deputy Cabral, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm struggling with this a little bit because the demographics haven't changed. The township hasn't changed. The consultants have done their job. They provided us with several options. And the trigger for what we're suggesting here at this table is at the county level. It's not at this table. It's based on a reduction from 32 to 16. I don't have a problem with proposing option number 2 with a caveat that if their county does, that we revisit this. I also have to question whether or not this additional work is going to incur additional costs, because I'm going to step back and say if we hadn't at county got through with the reduction from 32 to 16, at least to explore that particular reduction, we would have likely selected one of these 2 options. So what I'm sensing right now is that we're utilizing the county trigger in order to determine where we should be going with the wards. I'm going to put forward that we proceed with option number 2 And that if the county does reduce to 16, that at that time, this council can revisit option 2 and adjust if necessary and if time permits. I don't know about the additional costs, but what I'm hearing is possibly June to have this in place. And at the county level, I was under the impression that it had to be completed by the end of 2025. The idea of going around all the various councils. So I'm still going to put option 2 on the table. I think if the trigger is the county making the decision for the 2/3 to reduce to 16 members, that trigger has to occur before we change what we would have done had that not come forward. So, and I have to admit, I hadn't had any opportunity to think about this. And that's why I'm a little bit reluctant to change tact based on what the county composition might be, because it may not happen until well into the fall.
Thank you. And before I go to Councillor Thompson, that it's not just the trigger. It was understanding that members of council are not entirely committed or excited about these solutions. It was trying to say, yes, there has been a change. There has been a change at the county, a potential change at the county, but also if a 6, like Oro-Medonte exists now with 32 at county. There are lots of examples where there is an appointed deputy mayor from more wards. Councillor Thompson and then Garwood.
Through to the chair to Mr. Amendolia. I hope I said that right. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, for bringing up the cost. That was going to be my question is, how does this extra work affect the budget? Can you complete this work within the budget allotment and allowance you've been given so far?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the mayor. I was trying to look at that on the fly because I anticipated that question. If you give me a couple of minutes, I can probably find that. I just haven't been able to locate where we're at. I know we're pretty close to budget. I'm just not sure if we have any surplus left, but yeah, give me a couple of minutes and I can get back to you on that.
And while we wait for that, Councillor Garwood, is your question for the consultant or maybe? Okay. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to clarify that when I'm speaking to the consultant about the trigger, I'm speaking about the population trigger, not the county's composition trigger. So I am much more interested in the population of Ward 4 and Ward 5. And when it reaches a certain point or a trigger, then other things happen. So not so much what happens at county. Just clarifying.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And this could be a question if the consultant can add it to the list, but maybe also just a statement in regards to if we were to move forward with option number 2. I believe there is that 45-day period for an appeal. Thank you. I might see it from a resident's perspective a bit challenging if we approve something today, go down a month or two and then completely change course again, pull that back and then go a different direction. So again, I don't see this as a non-decision. I see this as gathering more data. I as well, just as the deputy mayor noted, I'm also hearing about this from the first time, and that's okay. Things come up at this table for the first time and we have to amend and adjust. So I'm comfortable with going the route as Councillor Moore and the mayor has proposed.
And it looks like our consultant might be prepared here.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. For council's information, we are at budget. So any additional work would come with some additional budget considerations, and I can provide that to the clerk by the end of the week.
Okay, Councillor Fisher?
Just, I think given what we just heard, that he's at budget and making ourselves more informed and always having, option 2 to fall back on, I think it's a smart decision to go ahead with what's proposed.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The only comment I'm going to make is this was a public process. The public is well aware of what the options are. So the reality is that if we were to sit here and add a third or look at this Ward 6, whether you have a deputy or not, or they're appointed or still, there's 32 and you have 6 wards and you still have the deputy and the mayor going to county if there remains 32. I mean, that's something to look at down the road. But the 6th ward was never presented to the public, and they did give their sense on what the public thought their selections were, what their preferences were. So I'm reluctant to not move forward with option 2 at this time. And I'd like to put it on the table and see where it goes, especially given the fact that we're at budget and we did spend a substantial amount of money moving this forward.
So at this time, we do have, I do see Councillor Garwood, but I will just ask for a seconder to get option 2 on the floor. I have Councillor Thompson. So moved by Deputy Cabral and seconded by Councillor Thompson. And back to Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor. And just on the budget perspective, of course, it's challenging to make decisions without an actual dollar figure in front of us. I respect that. But I also know that on page 16 from the consultant's final report, final option 2 speaks to this option as a minimal disruption option. So therefore, in theory, we could be spending 2, 3, 4 times the amount that it's going to cost to get the data now in 4 years from now or a couple of years from now, should this process need to take place again next term. I want to think beyond this term of council. I've always been saying that we have to think beyond 2026, and gathering the information here does just that. So I will not be supporting option number 2.
All right, and just procedure wise, so we do have 2 options before us. We have option number 2 being moved. If there is an amendment to option 2, otherwise, you would vote against it and then have option 1. But from what I've heard, option 1 seems to be a non-option for most of this council. So have I got that wrong? Oh, Councillor Moore.
Procedurally then, is so we do have the ability to put something else on the table once, and if the first motion or the first is defeated, we can still then go back and ask the consultant to do the work that we've discussed. Or does that have to be an amendment to the deputies?
I'm really regretting bringing it. I was really just trying to keep peace on the table. Because we have gone through public consultation, because we have gotten to this point, I do feel that we need to move either option 1 or 2, or essentially remove option 1 as an option. I'm hearing that of the 2, number 2 seems to be what everybody wants to move with, but if there was a amendment to that, so that should staff report back on the costs associated to provide a additional option, I will turn to the clerk and ask if council was to be satisfied with option 2 this evening and await the report back at our next meeting. Understanding that the 45-day trigger would start, can we hold off on that 45-day trigger until we've received that information back in 2 weeks? Clerk Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and I might look to our consultant just to confirm, but I believe my understanding would be the 45-day trigger doesn't start until we pass the bylaw. So if by choosing option 2 this evening, we can hold on bringing forward that bylaw for approval until we can report back on additional costs for the consultant to do further work at a subsequent meeting. And then I'll just look to Jack to confirm that.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor. Exactly that. I mean, many councils even approve the option in principle, and then, may through the clerk ask for a couple of tweaks. And we want to be careful too, right? If you approve an option in principle and we're able to tweak it, like tweak in quotes, but we want to be sure to the conversation tonight that we're not making any significant changes that council feels would have to be put out to the public again. So yeah, you can make a decision tonight. You can look for some tweaks. You can ask some questions, and then we can work through that and then start to finalize what you think a bylaw would look like. Like the clerk mentioned, the appeal period doesn't start until you've actually officially passed that bylaw.
I have Councillor Garwood, and then you guys are pointing at each other. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So just hearing that again, by no means, having to be, I guess, careful in a preliminary sense of approving an option in theory. I'm questioning as to why we can't gather that information around costs associated with additional work from the consultant and or requesting the consultant proceed with providing additional information, keeping these options very much viable. We're not getting rid of them off the table and then circling back after, whether that is additional public consultation, which I said from the outset, and then we have an additional option, let's say. So I just don't see how that procedurally would be an issue, but just correct me if I'm wrong.
And so then we would have to just remove the option from the table and then it would become a referral. So that we're not selecting either one or option 1 or 2, but we were referring it to staff for additional information. That would be how we move without removing one from the table procedurally. Back to Councillor Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
I'm not quite sure if there is currently something on the floor. So there is, okay, I will take that back.
You can, even if there is something on the floor, you can then present a referral. We don't have to vote on what's on the floor. We can have a referral. So I
Okay.
will go to Deputy Cabral and then I will come back to you for a referral. Potential referral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. To be quite frank, I'm really struggling with this whole conversation after being a year into it with public consultation, public meetings, the money that's been spent, the time that's been spent. And I'm sitting here thinking, based on the criteria that was utilized to develop the ward system and try and balance everything out as best as they could, which resulted in the different ward boundary options that were presented to us, I can't see how adding a 6th ward is going to be a tweak. I see that as being a relatively major undertaking, and I'm going to, through you to Mr. Amendolia, like to add a ward and take all of those the criteria you folks used, the demographics, the socioeconomic pieces, the merging of different areas and the similarities of the different communities, and when you develop the different wards, do you envision adding a 6th ward to be a tweak or a major overhaul? That would be my question.
And through to the consultant.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and through the mayor. I think it depends, right? I think it depends, and I totally understand what you're saying. It seems like it would be something very significant, being that it wasn't brought up until tonight. But I think I look at it 2 ways. It was something that was discussed when we looked at the concentration of growth. It did come up through feedback in person sessions. And I think the way I look at public feedback, it's going on right till this minute, right? And if council in their wisdom thinks that that's something that they want the consultant team to look at, and we evaluate it with the same criteria that we've evaluated all the other options, again, I wouldn't say it's a tweak, but I think it's something fair to ask the consultant if council thinks that they want to look at it. From the public consultation point of view, I've done it both ways and with other municipalities. Sometimes we've made a change like this and only released the information online with social media outlining that there's been a change and a report and some maps to outline the change. Some municipalities have thought that we need to do another engagement session, but so both are plausible. I think both are defensible, but ultimately it's up to council and staff, I think, to decide if that's something that's required here. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's a little bit of a roundabout way. I mean, it's definitely larger than a tweak, but I wouldn't say that because of that, it absolutely requires additional public consultation. I think that's up to you, knowing your community and knowing the engagement that's been present so far.
Follow on.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate that. I'm just looking at adding a 6th ward there, and then seeing, you know, the south end of Springwater Township is growing. There's already a concentration of housing going in there, a little bit more growth, obviously, than in the north end. And I think the idea of when the boundary review was done was to balance out the wards as best they could, looking into the foreseeable future too, which the consultants took into consideration. But I have to question when you've got three down in the south end and then Ward 1, 2, and 3, and then you've got 4, 5, 6 in the south end. I wonder if that might create a bit of an imbalance with respect to the direction council might take going forward when there's 6 wards rather than 5. You know, be more of a concentration, because as far as population is concerned, is it warranted to go to 6 just based on population? Or is it, you know, how many residents per ward councillor is an appropriate number? Because right now we're in the neighborhood of probably 4,000 is what we're looking at.
I'll go back to the consultant on that.
Yeah, that's, thank you again, Counselor, and through the mayor. Another great question. There's no criteria, right? There's nothing in the municipal act or any of the legislation that tells us what an appropriate number of councillor residents per councillor is. You're right. Right now it's around, or at least with some of the designs. I mean, right now, based on 2024, you have a population of around a little over 24,000. So an ideal number would be just a little under 5,000 per ward. The size of your council is consistent with a lot of municipalities across Simcoe County. So there's no, you know, right or wrong number. I think it's unique to your individual situation. But I can tell you when we look at comparators, it's right in the wheelhouse when we compare it to other municipalities around the county.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. You know, when I look at final option number 2, I'm looking at those significant numbers of Ward 4 having 5,000 residents by 2034 and Ward 5 having 17,000 residents by 2034. Sorry, 2034, not 2035. We talk about a variance, and that's what triggered this in the first place. Understanding wards 1 and 2 are the smallest wards population wise, and Ward 4 being the largest. A variance is going to grow with just going with the status quo, which is option 2. Again, I completely respect the boundaries that are in place with this situation. I don't think any council is probably ever going to love every situation that comes forward, because change is sometimes challenging, and I can respect that. But again, I look at the fact that in 9 years, potentially even sooner, this council or the next council or whoever it's going to be is going to be in the same position once again, and actually a worse position. Ward 5, a councillor should not have 17,000 residents. Councillor Fisher, you can absolutely handle it. Yeah. But respectfully, your neighbor next door in Ward 4 would have, 60% less than you. So I think it's something just to think about for the future.
Thank you. So at this time, I would need Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would like to put a referral on the floor to staff to provide additional information, including costs and timelines. And I'll look to Councillor Moore for anything further.
Councillor Moore?
I would love to second that.
Sorry, point of order, Mayor Coughlin. I previously said I wanted to see option number 2 come.
Option
before.
2 is on the floor
Thank
currently,
you.
and a referral has been put forward. If the referral is, you moved it and it was seconded, option 2 is on the floor. Councillors Garwood and Moore have put forward a referral. If the referral is defeated, we would move back to voting on option 2. If a referral is supported, the referral pass, and we will have option 2 on a table at a later date. So council, now before us is a motion to refer. So we have a referral that the motion before council now be referred to staff to report back on additional costs and timelines for the consultants to further research. Just further research. Yeah. Okay. So the referral, council, all those in favor? And that has carried. And we will now move on to our action reports. We have item 8.5 being pulled for a separate conversation. Counselor, are there any of the action items that you wish to have pulled to speak to or have redirection? Counselor Alexander?
8.12 for redirection, please.
12. So 8.5 and 8.12 are being pulled to be dealt with separately. So at this time, we do have, I need a mover and seconder for the remaining action items, please. I have Counselor Garwood and Counselor Moore, that action items 8.2 through 8.12 be received with the exception of 8.5 and 8.12. I'll read those through. 8.2, that 16 Mill Street West. 8.3, the financial acceptance request for phase 1. 8.4, the extension of the term for the 2024-15 iOS dust suppression. 8.6, the Midhurst Heights 1A, 1B subdivision security reduction. 8.7, the final acceptance request for phase 2 of Stone Manor Woods. 8.8, the extension term of the 2021-10, the supply and delivery of bulk highway salt. 8.9, the model home sales center agreement for the Thompson subdivision. 8.10, the City View planning module, and 8.11, it's a drainage agreement for 2466 Ronald Road. Are there any questions or comments on any of those in the consent? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, I will turn to Deputy Cabral to chair 8.5. And I'll do 8.12 on the finish this.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. May I have a mover and seconder for White Owl Properties, reduction of securities and certificate of final completion? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Moore, that the report from the development engineering technologist regarding White Owl Properties 2333 Castle Drive, reduction of securities and certificate of final completion dated February the 5th, 2024 be received, and that the securities amounting to $965,606.39 be released and returned to White Owl Properties, and that staff be directed to issue the certificate of final completion and the 1-year maintenance period can commence. Are there any questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And I'll turn the chair back over to Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you. We're now moving on to 8.12, and I have this pulled by Councillor Alexander and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Fisher. And 8.12 is that the report from the Legislative Records Coordinator regarding the International Grant Application 2025-01 and 2025-02 dated February 5th be received, and that council approve the maximum one-time contribution of $1,000 for application 2025-01, and that council approve the maximum one-time contribution of $1,000 for application 2025-02, and that council approve the total contribution of $915.40 to be funded from the international grant competition, and that $1,084.60 from the Springwater Swing Fund, and that the international grant program be terminated. And at this time, I will turn to Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I think this is a great program. My only issue with the motion on the floor is I don't think we should terminate the program. I did reach out to the deputy clerk, I think she still is, or Clerk Marshall, regarding a small amendment. I do think we may need to look at the program overall, just in that there wasn't a lot of guidelines about it when I looked into it. So I don't want to make a decision on that piece tonight. I just don't want to terminate it. So if I could pass it over to Clerk Marshall to read the amendment.
Clerk Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So the amendment that I have is to strike out the last line that would terminate the program, and to add that staff report back on the continuation of the international competition grant program.
Thank you. And maybe if I can ask Clerk Marshall to elaborate for maybe members of the public as to why the first recommendation was to terminate.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So we received these two applications before council, and it was realized that the fund had sort of been depleted. And when looking into the creation of the program back in 2016, I believe, the intention at the time was they set an allotment of money towards this program to create it, and it was the intention to terminate the program once funds were exhausted. So that is the motion that came forward. And it is up to council to whether they want to terminate it or not. And so Councillor Alexander reached out and is wishing to have a further look at the program and revisit it and not terminate it at this time.
Thank you for that. So the amendment before us is moved by Councillor Alexander and seconded by Councillor Garwood. All those in favor? And that has carried. So we will go back to the main motion as amended. So that would be to approve both of the applications and also outline the funding. And I don't need to read it again, I don't think. So we're back to the main motion as amended. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We'll now move on to item number 9, which is our information reports. And we have 8 reports listed herein. So council, I need a mover and seconder for these, please. I have councillors Thompson and Fisher, that the report items listed herein be received as information. 1 is the building service monthly activity report of December 2024. 2 is the bylaw services monthly activity report of December 2024. 3 is the 2024 advisory committee overview. 4 is the zoning bylaw amendment for application ZB 2024-020, and that is 1954 Floss Road 8 West. And we have number 5, which is OP 2024-006 and ZB 2024-019 and SU 2024-003, which is Stone Manor Woods. And 6, it's a planning application volume summary for 2024. 7 is the Environmental Registry of Ontario, posting at number 198320, and that's the Minister's Permit and Review of the Powers under the Conservation Authorities Act. And 8 is the 2025 Asset Management Plan. And at this time, I will turn to council to see if there's any to be pulled for redirection. And any comments or questions on any? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And as we do not have any verbal updates, I will now turn to municipal updates. Councillor Fisher?
Just have a few. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the rink, as I always do. Very successful winter. I think we're probably over 2 inches of ice. So we've had really good ice surfaces. I just want to thank actually the public. It's been a very peaceful year with hockey players and skaters getting along very well. Also rink maintenance. I think the public is doing a great job of scraping the rink when they're done and leaving it a lot better for volunteers. In past, volunteers had to work a lot harder. Big news. We have new netting for our goalie posts. So be installing that soon. And one, it's way off, guys, but I think I want to give the public lots of time, particularly those parents who want to start building derby cars with their kids. I know it's a long way off, but they take a while to build. So I want to start putting that out to the public and hopefully getting some people working on it, so they're not scrambling at the end. One thing I'd love to see, and I know Midhurst would like to see, it would be nice to see people from all around. It would be nice to see people from Phelpston, Elmvale, Hillsdale come out with cars. So it would be nice. So those are my updates.
Councillor Alexander and then Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just quickly, off of Councillor Fisher. Yes, it's been a great year for outdoor rinks. So a big thank you to all the volunteers in both Hillsdale and Phelpston for all of their work. As we all know, it's a lot of work, so they're doing a great job. And second to that, I did want to provide a quick update on this Sunday, February 9th. Phelpston will be holding a family fun day, which will include skating, some hockey and skating competitions for the kids, a little healthy competition, as well as a barbecue. So anybody who is out and about on Sunday afternoon, please stop by the Phelpston Rink.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. First, I'd like to speak to the significant weather event that occurred last Wednesday, a week today. Of course, many folks know across our region, but especially in the Elmvale community last Wednesday. We were hit pretty hard with lots of blowing snow and weather. Chief Kirk is here. I'd like to thank your team, the men and women of the Springwater Fire Department, for your efforts. I know we spent some time together that evening, and your crews were out into the early morning hours. So I think that's important to mention as well. Director Harvey, your team as well was out Public Works plowing throughout the evening to get cars and folks home safe. So I wanted to thank the both of you, as well as Director Culver and Manager Dean, who were all here from the facilities perspective, for having the warming station in Elmvale, and for spending late hours there. So thank you. That meant a lot to our community and the municipality as a whole. So it was a challenging day, but the municipality came together for that. So I wanted to thank each of those groups. Next, I wanted to speak about some Elmvale Community Recreation Association events that are coming up on Family Day weekend. On Valentine's Day, the ECRA is hosting our fundraising concert at the Elmvale Community Hall, which is sold out, which is very exciting. So we've sold over 200 tickets for that event, which is very exciting. The funds raised for that event fund all of our events throughout the year, which is quite exciting. And then on the 17th, which is Family Day, we will be having our second annual Family Fun Fest on the Floss Ag Society Fairgrounds from 10 till 1. And then from 1 to 2:30, the Family Skate will be sponsored by the Elmvale Community Recreation Association. So it'll be free for families to come out, access the arena, and spend the afternoon there. So we're quite excited about that's a busy weekend for the ECRA. I think we overplanned ourselves there a bit, but that's okay. And I wanted to end with a special shout out and mention. I know it's been mentioned at this table before, but our Springwater Public Library. I think this past week, Chair Graham was awarded the James Bain Medallion for Public Library Board Member of the Year at their annual super conference last week. So that's a pretty exciting thing. I saw some of it in the news media, in the media, and online. So it's quite exciting. And I wanted to especially thank Councillor Thompson for your efforts with the board. And I think it's being rewarded as our Springwater Public Library is once again awarded with a special recognition. So thank you and the board.
Councillor Thompson?
Well, thank you, Councillor Garwood, for your kind words. I echo what an amazing chair that Chair Graham is, and the great work. I recognize the great work that the board members do. They're dedicated, they're hardworking, and they're a credit to our community, just like our library staff is. And well done to Adrian Graham. Would like to invite our community to join me at the Minising Community Center this weekend for our 53rd annual Mini Fest. It's a great weekend. It's a great family event. It starts Friday evening at 7 o'clock. Join me for a euchre night and a family skate. Saturday morning, it begins at 9 a.m. with a pancake and female bacon breakfast. Please come. I'll be happy to serve you there. At noon, there's a parade that Swampy will be at, and it will end with a fabulous disco dance. So come one, come all, and have a wonderful weekend with us in Minising. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other updates. At this time, we'll move on to our notices of motion, and the first one I have is from Councillor Fisher, and looking for a seconder on that. Councillor Garwood, and back over to Councillor Fisher.
All right, I'll read her out. Whereas Midhurst Community Park was previously named Lions Park, a name that holds historical and community significance to the residents of the area, and whereas the Springwater Vespra Lions Club has been an integral part of the community, contributing to various charitable community initiatives, and whereas a desire in the community to rename the Midhurst Community Park back to Lions Park, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Springwater hereby approves the renaming of the Midhurst Community Park back to the Midhurst Lions Park, and that the council directs staff to proceed with the replacing of the park signage at an upset limit of $3,500 to be funded from the approved 2025 operating budget. So just want to speak to it a bit. You know, the Lions Club in just about every community, but certainly in Springwater is really an integral part of the community. I can tell you the Midhurst Lions Club holds some excellent events and fundraising events. The Duck Race, Pumpkin Palooza. I know as a member of the Midhurst CRA, they're always there for Autumn Fest and for our Derby as well. When it comes to the park, you know, there is a history of the Lions Club really investing in the infrastructure of the park, the original fencing, I believe the retaining walls I've come to find out, and certainly the original equipment. So this is really something they have invested in historically in the past. I also, you know, in gaining support for this, you know, I did reach out to Councillor Garwood because he also has a Lions Club in his area. So they really are bookends for the community, and I think they're both very important. So I actually just wanted him to take a minute, maybe less than a minute, Councillor Garwood, and just maybe let us know about a few events that your Lions and Lionesses have in the Elmvale area.
Councillor Garwood, I will start the clock.
Thanks, Councillor Fisher. I learn, you know, from the best. But yeah, anyway, I'm happy to second this motion. I think it's incredibly important to provide recognition where it's due. Speaking of the Elmvale and District Lions Club, from the truck draw, which is occurs throughout the community and culminates at the fair each year, partnering at our 30th anniversary last year here, whether that be partnering with our Elmvale Community Recreation Association, various funding requests, and we also have a very active Lioness group as well in Elmvale that partners significantly with the community, and I could keep going down the list. So to keep to the clock timeline here, I'm happy to second the motion, and I see we have some Lions in the audience tonight, so thanks for being here, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Move on to our second notice of motion, and I have this moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Councillor Fisher, and I will turn to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. My motion tonight is a little lengthy, and I have made some small tweaks to the original that was posted that Councillor Fisher has graciously agreed to. So what I'll be reading tonight will be the official motion. Whereas in September 2023, the mayor of the city of Barrie presented a proposal to Springwater Council regarding a proposed boundary adjustment. And whereas in September 2024, Hemson Consulting was jointly engaged by the city of Barrie, County of Simcoe, Township of Springwater, and Township of Oro-Medonte to undertake a joint land needs analysis and study. And whereas the joint land needs analysis and study dated December 2024 confirmed that Barrie and Springwater are part of the same regional market and that housing growth in Springwater's Midhurst Secondary Plan area may necessitate the expedited designation of additional employment lands to maintain balanced community development. And whereas all the objectives of the joint land needs analysis and study can be achieved if Springwater, rather than Barrie, were to approve the proposed annexation lands for both residential and employment purposes. And whereas the County of Simcoe has continued to support its local municipalities through a regional systems approach to achieve provincial directives for housing and economic development in an expedited, streamlined, and cost-effective manner. Whereas on December the 11th, 2024, the city of Barrie passed a motion that there would not be servicing provided to the subject neighboring municipalities without a boundary adjustment. And whereas Springwater, through the Growth and Economic Viability Ad Hoc Committee, is currently working on a growth management study to examine growth potential looking forward to 2051 and beyond, including increased residential and employment development beyond current settlement area boundaries. And whereas Council for the Township of Springwater recognizes the importance of development along major transportation corridors, such as Highway 400. That Council directs staff to report back with information regarding the planning process, i.e. County OPA, Township OPA, and/or ZBA, necessary to consider an expansion of the Midhurst Secondary Plan area, specifically to the east of Midhurst to include the 400 corridor. That staff be directed to report back regarding the provincially significant employment zones, PSEZ, successor program, if any, and that staff report back with the confirmed capacity of the ultimate treatment facility to verify Springwater's ability to independently service the identified study area lands and the potential settlement area expansion. That staff report back with an update on the status of the growth management study being undertaken by the municipality and direct WSP to prioritize and expedite the initial focus of the study to include the Midhurst settlement area expansion over to the Highway 400, and that to be returned no later than June 2025. Thank you. I can continue. So when we look at the provincial planning statement that was released just in October of 2024, the settlement areas are to be the focus of growth and development, and that within those settlement areas, growth should be focused in strategic growth areas. What's changed is that the requirement for only permitted settlement area boundary expansions at the time were allowed with a municipal comprehensive review. Now that is being permitted to, or that expansion is being permitted at any time. Specifically, planning authorities are, which is what a council would be considered, to identify strategic growth areas and make them the focus of growth and development with a view to accommodate significant population and employment growth, which supports the transit network. Making it clear that strategic growth areas and designated growth areas are not just land use or delineated areas. Major transit station areas have a new section, policy 2.4.2, and councils can set targets for those areas and protections for those high transportation corridors. Identifying strategic sites for investment, encouraging intensification of employment uses, also saves, at the end of the day, our agricultural land. We are protecting employment areas, need the near major goods movement facilities and corridors, while protecting settlement areas for housing. Councils are to assess and update employment areas in official plans to ensure the designation is appropriate to the planned function of those areas. And that is what I'm asking from council today, is to allow our official plan to be updated and expanded. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I can turn to members of council for any comments or questions. Right. Councillor Alexander.
So I just have a general comment on this. I think moving forward in this direction, it gives us the opportunity for Springwater to look at developing both residential and employment lands in line with the province's mandate and allowing us to do it ourselves, as opposed to having Barrie annex the lands and do it for us. I'm not saying that's not the result of this motion, but it puts us in a place where we can go down that road and do this work ourselves that the province wants to happen while not giving up the lands to Barrie. And from my perspective, that is my ultimate end goal, is to keep as much of the lands in Springwater as possible. And I feel that this motion puts us in the right direction to be able to move forward with this. So I'm happy to support.
Well, thank you. And before I do go to Councillor Fisher, Clerk, do you have the amended version? Are you able to send that to her just so we can get that? Thank you. Councillor Fisher?
I think the motion speaks for itself, and we've all had a good chance to look at it. But personally, I find it very innovative and very forward-thinking. I think many of us have long since thought that Springwater needs to find an in-house solution, a solution for ourselves, and forge forward with it. I agree with Councillor Alexander's sentiments. We need to keep as much of the land as we can, but also keep as much of the potential future revenue as we can. I have long since felt that we are right now with the provincial government and their mandates, their need for growth. We're in a use it or lose it state. So we need to really look for ways to grow. We need to, I wouldn't say appease the government, but we need to we need to go along with their goals in a strategic way in areas that are suited for it. And to that point, you know, we also need to protect our agricultural lands. So I think this is very innovative. I think it has amazing potential for not only future growth, but future employment. We're in a very unique situation where we can grow this ourselves. And to quote the Premier, it's an imaginary line, right? Now, I think what Springwater residents need to ask themselves is, where do you want that line? Do you want to have creative control yourself over what happens in Springwater, what happens in your backyard, or do you want that to be Barry's backyard? And I think that most residents would agree they want to be Springwater residents, and I think actually most developers would agree that it's very cost effective to develop here, and we can provide an excellent solution for them and an excellent solution for our residents. So I applaud this coming forward. I know there was a lot of hard work that went into it, and I hope that council supports it. I really hope that council supports it because I think this is excellent for our community. And actually, as a side note, you know, Springwater is vast and long, and we do have different. I think every ward is very different, but one thing I can tell you, you know, I've had phone calls from people telling me, I remember when, you know, Little Lake was part of Springwater, you know, and it was annexed. I remember when Cundles was part of Springwater, and, you know, the mall used to be, you know, we could have taken tax revenue from the mall. So, you know, I hear these things and I think, geez, you're right. But if we start to erode Springwater and the tax base, it doesn't just affect wards 4 and 5. There's a trickle down effect. And, you know, Mr. Garwood, I look across the table at you and your community, a vibrant community that we support in evenings like tonight. You know, a rink that neighbors of mine, you know, they play hockey there. So as vast as it is, it is a community. It's one Springwater. And I think that we need to be cognizant of that. And this allows us to keep that. It allows us to keep the revenue. And for those people who want to develop here, I think it's a great place for you to do business. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And echoing, thank you, Councillor Moore, for the work, but especially for being amendable and making it something that everyone was able to support. I think that was the intention. I would like to, just as I know that our CIO has not seen the final, so I just want to pull it up because anytime we talk about anything outside a settlement area boundary, planners get really, really nervous. So I just want to make sure that the direction, I'm not going to go back through any of the whereases, but specifically the direction that is being provided to staff. If I can, or maybe I can even, can you see that there? And if you can just let me know after reading it if there's any concern. I think that it's well written. I just wanted to make sure that CEO Hubbard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Having read the paragraphs that provide direction to staff to report back, I think it's absolutely within staff's capacity to report back on these matters. Largely, it's the planning process in compliance with the PPS 2024 and the Planning Act. The one requirement would be to report back by June 2025. We can certainly report back by that time, but having results by that time might be a little bit more difficult. But we will take this message back to the consultant who is working on the growth management plan. We met with that group just last week and advise them of the importance of hurrying this work up because there are decisions that need to be made. So we will reinforce that message with the consulting group.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And again, thank you, Councillor Moore, for being amendable to making the adjustments in the motion. It makes it more clear for me. I'm all in favor of looking outside the settlement areas for growth and economic development. One question I do have, though, is what does this motion add to the WSP growth management study that's already taking place? Because I thought all the stuff in here was already being looked at through that management study.
I can turn, do you want me to go to staff or do you want me to? Sure. I don't know if I go to manager. No, okay. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The GMS, the growth management study that's being worked on, would look at all of Springwater Township. However, this discussion is primarily directed at the urban growth areas. And while yes, there would be some review of expansion of settlement boundaries that the consultant would have been looking at, what this does is send a message to that team that council sees that there's merit in looking at certain areas for settlement area expansion. So it does not specifically direct them. We can't tell them what their opinion is. They would be reporting back to us, but it's sending a message that there's an area of importance to council that the consultant should pay attention to.
Deputy Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just wanted to comment here. This whole concept here is an opportunity for Springwater Township to provide some development initiatives and move forward on their own to attract more building of houses. I mean, we do a fantastic job there. We're not looking for people to build. People are knocking at our door to build here. And the Midhurst secondary plan is certainly proof of that. I think it also provides opportunity for Springwater Township to forge ahead in a direction of expanded development and bringing online things that maybe would have been a little bit further off into the distance. And I want to point also to the provincial government, you know, with the Ontario Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund, where they just recently provided roughly $35 million towards Springwater Township for the assistance in ongoing expansion of the Midhurst Valley wastewater treatment plant, which will enable much of the development that we're so desirous of having moved forward happen, because that would have been a tough call just on our own, even though we certainly have the support and we have the developers in our area working hard on that plant. So I think this is a great step forward for us. I think it provides a really good opportunity for the provincial government to look at Springwater Township and say that, you know, yeah, they can do it. And they can help us do everything that we want to do. It also provides an opportunity for residents to acquire affordable housing, and also a good place for businesses to open up their business, because it's a little bit more reasonable in Springwater Township too. So I'm happy to support this motion going forward.
Councillor Carwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you to both Councillor Fisher and Councillor Moore. Again, you're getting lots of thanks this evening, but for amending a conversation that I had with Councillor Moore earlier on, I wanted to find a way to be able to support this, and I think the language gets it definitely closer. Just one question that I had through the mayor to CAO Heron, just the last paragraph there, where it speaks to the growth management study being undertaken by the municipality and direct WSP to prioritize and expedite the initial focus of the study to include the Midhurst settlement area expansion over to Highway 400, to be returned at a date no later than June 2025. So my only worry and potential concern, and I hope staff can ease that concern, is I don't want to end run the process. I don't want to direct the study before the study comes back, assuming that that area would be included in it. But CEO Heron, if you can provide some insight on that, and I'd appreciate it.
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Garwood. Pardon me, sorry. the initial report back in terms of staff reporting back on planning process and OPA and ZBA and those methodologies and tools under the Planning Act, staff can decidedly report back by the deadline of June 2025. For the consultant, and notice I'm not saying WSP because the consulting team is made up of a number of different consulting firms. For the consultant to provide a report back to council for that date that would be definitive does not fall in line with the work plan that the consultant has proposed to the township. There has been a delay in the start of 3 months. The start was supposed to be in September and end in December of this year. The work just commenced in January, and staff have advised the consulting team that we still to see the end result in December of this year. So long story short, by June of this year, for the consultant to report back with a definitive analysis of expanding settlement area boundaries might be premature. There will be some public sessions built into this where this would be on the table. I would have to review the work plan, and the consultant is yet to provide us with an updated work plan. We met with them just last week, and they're working on that right now. So I would suggest that possibly softening the motion that the consultant report back in good time, which gives us an easier window to work with, and we can strive to get something on this topic back to before council before December.
I did see that Manager Russell wanted to add comment.
Through your worship, just to add on to CAO Heron's comments, through the work plan, there are a number of check-in points, both to council with presentations, as well as to the ad hoc viability and economic committee. So there are quite a few different opportunities that council will have an opportunity or input through this. But again, to the June 2025, if we could soften that, that would be appreciated.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to CAO Heron or interim CAO Heron. There is a sense of urgency with this, and I am okay with a status update coming forward, so mid-June. But I would like a progress report or a status update at that time, maybe not a full report, but I am agreeable to having information brought forward specifically to this one topic. I'm of a mindset too, where maybe some of the other stuff can go to the wayside but this particular piece of the study, I would like at least a fulsome status update.
Thank you. And if I might add, then where it says to be returned no later than, would it just be that an update be provided to council? And does that appease? Perfect. And that would be the only suggestion from there. So anything, oh, hi, Councillor Garwood? No? All right, Councillor Fisher? So council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Are there any, no, thank you. Are there any additional notices of motion this evening? Are there any items for future consideration? Not seeing any. May I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws, please? I have Councillors Garwood and Thompson. That bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2025-013 road naming Thompson Land Subdivision Street D. 2025 road naming D Hickling Subdivision Street B. 2025-015 amend fees and charges bylaw schedule. 2024-046. 2025-016 assumption of the Stone Manor Woods. 2025-017 assumption of Stone Manor Woods, Yorkwood Phase 2. Are there any questions or comments on bylaws? Seeing any. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw? Oh, all those in favor. Sorry about that. May I have a move? Okay, carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander that bylaw 2025-018 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on February 5th, 2025 listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That has carried. And adjournment, please. Mover and seconders, Councillor Moore and Fisher, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:37 PM to meet again in the regular meeting on February 19th, 2025 at 6:30 PM. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you.